Good afternoon everybody and welcome to the Council meeting on Tuesday the 20th of August. Welcome the councillors, the staff, members of the public and all those at home who are listening in, and special welcome to Ian, being his first meeting in the executive team. Welcome Ian. And we'll move on to item number 2, which is extraordinary, apologies number 1, and everyone's here. Item number 2 is extraordinary business. I know of none. Is there any? 3, declarations of interest. Councillor Wilson.
Yes, I have one in P excluded part.
So you'll not partake in that item and you'll be leaving the room. But thank you. That'll be item 17. Confirmation of the minutes. Discussion of whether those minutes are correct on page 3, page 4, 5 and 6. Councillor Hooper.
Happy to move that they're correct.
Councillor McMillan seconded. I have a question. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Just on page 6, around when you were presented with your Fire Brigade Spa, was it 21 years, is that correct?
21 is correct.
Yeah, and Warren Maslin's last name, I think it's I-N, not E-N, but that's
Okay.
minor.
Should correct that.
But I'm happy to second.
With those adjustments moved and seconded, all in favour, please say aye. It's carried, thank you. Audit, over to page 7, Audit and Risk Committee minutes, and we'll receive them. And there's a recommendation there as well. Councillor Ellis moved, Councillor Lovett seconded. We received those minutes. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. And the recommendation there to Council that Audit and Risk Committee recommends to Council that the Building Consent Authority audit report be received. The mover, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Ellis. All those in favour, please say aye. It's carried. Next item is the Hakatere Reserve, Upper Hakatere Reserve, and Councillor Ellis, did you want to update us after the site visit? And
yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a meeting with some of the residents on Saturday, and they have asked me from that meeting to just let councillors know that some members of their community are still not happy with the decision that's going to be made around no camping and with the removal of the bollards. They would like all bollards removed, not just the ones that we have said. So that's just some feedback from that meeting. But previous to that, we did have a working group meeting where there was a consensus of members to remove camping from the upper Hakatere area to lower, and to remove some bollards to allow parking in the picnic area.
well, thank you. When you say that some residents there are not happy with the recommendation here, so there must be some residents that are happy with the recommendation here. Is that fair?
I don't know. So I got feedback from those that weren't happy. So so yeah.
Yep. Thank you. We've got a question. We're going to go to questions. But we've got a comment for
Can I just
Councillor
add on to that? I
Yep.
went down to the meeting as well, and there is a real mixture down there, but there is people that are happy to do this trial in the way we're heading as well. So you've got some for, some against, and I think it comes back to council to make decisions.
Yep. Welcome, Leanne and Neil. Anything further to add to the report?
Nothing from where I'm sitting.
Questions, councillors? We're going to take the recommendation in 3 parts. And there's a first recommendation there that Council revokes Clause 2 of the Hakatere Reserve Working Group Resolution 26th of June 24 in respect to the repositioning of the bollards. So I'd like to move. Councillor Cameron,
Thank
Councillor
you.
Miller, you'll speak to it?
Yeah, should I leave that out to questions?
No, there's no questions now.
Okay. I think we had the meeting here and I recall asking a question, was this the consensus of the group? And I think I recall the answer as being yes, it was. But then upon discussion at the meeting, we felt that that wasn't what was intended. So I'm delighted to move this motion and hope that we can get some satisfaction and agreement between both groups.
Speakers for or against? We revoke that decision. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Number 2, the council approves the removal of 31 bollards from the Upper Hakatiri Reserve as identified on the attached plan for a trial period over the 24-25 summer period. We'll move in a second. Councillor Ellis. Councillor Brown. Will speak to the motion. Any speakers for or against? Councillor Lovett.
I'd just like to say I think this is a good compromise for down there, and we're going to monitor it, and I think we've got to look at what the ones living down there want, and we've also got to look at the wider community of Ashburton that goes down and enjoys that space as well, and I think this is a good compromise.
No more speakers for or against. Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Against. Carried. Thank you. Number 3, that council reconfirms that camping is not permitted at the Upper Hakatiri Reserve and continues to monitor the area for illegal camping. Councillor Brown moved. Councillor Todd second. Who to?
I wanted to ask a question on this topic, on this motion.
To who?
To the group or staff? To the working group or staff?
We'll allow a question. Go.
It's a very easy question. We're doing a trial period over the 24-25 summer period for the removal of the 31 bollards. Is this under a trial review as well, this aspect of it, or is this a permanent decision forever?
Hamish?
Yeah, the no camping.
Part 3 has no trial.
Okay, no trial.
There's no trial attached to the recommendation or the motion as I understand it.
Okay. Is that what's understood by the working group? Yep. Thank you. That was my question.
Right, thank you. I have a recommendation. Now, Councillor Todd, speaking for or against?
Speaking for.
Yep.
I'm just briefly, I'm firmly of the view that we only need one camping area at Hakatiri, and that's designated with at the lower end, and there's going to be new toilets put in there shortly as well, which will enhance the area. We don't need 2 areas for camping.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. I also speak in favour. This particular location is a fantastic spot for people to go and picnic, and to be available for that purpose. We have specific tables, picnic tables set up there that have wheelchair accessibility, and now with the removal of the bollards, disabled people will be able to park next to that table, and I just think it is it's a lovely area and now available to all of the community to use on a picnic basis.
No further speakers for or against. I'll put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Gets carried. Thank you. Oh, yeah, thank you. One thing we need to do is receive those minutes. Get a move. I didn't get a move in a second for that, did I? No, I didn't. Move in a second. Councillor Ellis and Councillor Lovett. All those in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Solid Waste Bylaw Draft for consultation. Item number 7. Welcome, Richard and O'Neill. Have you anything further to add to the report?
Yes, I do, Your Worship. 2 things. One is on page 37. It's in relation to clause 8.4. And this is an omission of a deletion. When we talked to you at workshop, we explained it was our intention that whenever an event was held on a council-owned or managed land, that we were proposing that we would require a waste minimisation plan, and that it would then be in proportion to the nature of the event. So clause 8.4.2 has been amended and clause 8.4.3 has been amended, but clause 8.4.1 should actually have been deleted to be consistent with what we've previously discussed with you. So if you're agreeable, we'd ask that you accept an adjustment to Appendix 1 to delete clause 8.4.1, and obviously then the balance of that clause also gets renumbered.
So just to clarify, on 8.4.2, council will require an event waste management, etc.
Yes.
Right.
And 8.4.1 comes out.
And 8.4, yeah, everything, all the numbers move up, obviously.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you for that, Judge. And this is going out for public consultation. If people do not like it, they can
Yep.
submit, and even if they do like it, they can submit as well in support.
I did have one other point of information. When we presented a workshop, we were considering what the preferred approach might be for a construction site waste minimisation management plan, and there was a suggestion made that it remain a non-mandatory, but that the range of work include any building work, and that is how we've framed it. We'll have some other options in there as well, but at this point our proposal is that it remains non-mandatory. That was all I had by way of introductory remarks.
Yep. Questions, councillors? Councillor McMillan?
Thank you. Just a question on page 44, and I can't. So you've got in there the use of the green FOGO bin commencing 1st of September, and you have the following items must not go in the green FOGO bin. But I have read somewhere else in this document, and I just can't find it at the moment, where it said that flax and cabbage tree leaves could not go in the organic waste. So is that the same as the FOGO, or is that separate? Should that be written under that 7.2?
Hernando confirms that it should be that you can't put flax and cabbage tree leaves in with your FOGO as well. There's issues because of the fibrous nature of those plants with composting.
Okay.
So they would go in the red bin.
They would go in the red bin.
So that's in the...
So you need to add that under the 7.2.6.
It is written in here somewhere, and I had made a note of it, but it's just disappeared at the moment.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor Lovett?
Just a question about this construction site waste management. If you're building a house, the 500,000, I mean, it's probably a small house, and you're saying you may require. It really worries me that it will become definite, and then looking at all your estimates, what they're going to have to produce, it's going to put a significant cost on a building, making it quite expensive. I'm wondering whether that 500 should be a little bit higher up, because
Yeah, what's the question? What's the question?
What are you going to trigger to do this?
At the moment, what's happening is that some builders are doing this, and it's part of their contract with the person that they're building the house for, and other builders are not. And we're proposing, and at this stage, even with the 500,000 threshold on non-residential work, we haven't been triggering this clause, partly because of our own resourcing, and partly because we didn't feel that the community was necessarily wanting council to put itself in the middle of this through a regulatory measure. We're still proposing to keep it mandatory. We see that practice is starting to change in the sector. I think the best outcome for this community would be to see that that voluntary adoption of good practice continue to grow, rather than for us to be regulating for it. And I think, to be honest, it would ultimately require some kind of national direction, giving us more powers to go down that road.
And using the word may instead of will allows that. But this is going out for consultation, and if the builders aren't happy with the wording of it, or they wouldn't like it, they can submit and tell us, and we'll have will be a hearing, and we'll go through that process of what people think about this draft bylaw. Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. I'm on page 44. As of the 1st of September 2026, Richard, do you see a major comms campaign around especially 7.1 and 7.2, what goes in and can't go in your FOGO bin?
Yes, I do. I'm not responsible for managing the comms team. I'm mindful too that this is part of a nationally directed change, and I'd like to think that the government which has driven this national direction will be looking to deliver some standard communications, because part of the point of this change was to have everyone doing the same things. Neil may have other words to say.
Yeah, I can confirm. We would automatically update our booklet that we have and we give to everyone in the community, but I think we would do something at least 3 months beforehand and put out some media releases and information just to raise the awareness of what can and what can't go in. Yep.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Just under the construction site waste management and minimalisation plans, should council include those in their tenders when they go out for construction, like, I don't know, a new wastewater plant, or we've got the elderly person's housing units, this building? Should they be part of our plans when we do that in the tendering process?
Yes, I think that's a point well raised. It is something we are considering going forward. There is a move, particularly with the NZTA, to consider sustainability and being that measurable in the non-price attributes, and it's something we've been thinking about how we can incorporate that in there. So under the methodology, when the tenderers submit their tender, we could give them some scoring on how they plan to sustainably manage their waste.
No further questions. Thank you, gentlemen. There's a recommendation there. If I can locate it. Is there a mover, seconder for it? We'll take the two parts as one. Councillor Brown moved. Councillor Ellis seconded. And this consultation, this document will go out for consultation and work through the process. No speakers for or against. I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Item number 8, end of year performance report. Welcome, FMK, Mark and Tony. Quite a lengthy report. Anything further to add?
Thank you, through Chair. Nothing further to add.
It's quite detailed, really. Councillors' questions. There's quite a bit to this report. Did you want to go through it in sections?
Yes.
Okay. And the first section starts on page what? 60. Drinking water. Yeah. Questions on the drinking water end of year performance report? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. We've obviously done some upgrades and we've got the new membrane treatment plant in Methven, which has been operating for a year, and then we'll have one in Mount Somers. But I see Methven still at 88.7%, which is good, but it's not at the 100% that's required. So will it get up to that 100%?
My understanding was the treatment plant wasn't fully operational on 1 July.
Right, I was wondering about that, so that's the reasoning for that. Okay, thank you.
So just a question then, what do the percentages actually mean?
Through the chair. So the percentages in relation to drinking water compliance are now based on the operability of the various components of the treatment system, and basically their uptime, if you like. So if it's 100% on a particular instrument, it didn't fail for the entire year. If it failed for 1 day, then obviously the percentage drops accordingly. 1 day out of the 365. We've attempted to obviously aggregate all of those scores together, and I suppose the key one there is Ashburton at quite a low percentage, and that really just does reflect where we are on the upgrade path. Once we get UV, we would expect that to be 100% or near 100% all of the time.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. Just for clarification, is Tynwald under Ashburton, is it?
Yes,
Part
that's
of
correct.
that supply?
Yep.
Okay.
Councillor Wilson?
I understand, obviously, talking quality with nitrates and E. coli and all that sort of stuff. About pressure and level of service, where does that fit into this report?
Further on, the customer complaints section. Yeah, majority of residents are satisfied with drinking water services, and it talks about customer satisfaction. So there's a number of complaints that we track: clarity, taste, odour, pressure or flow, or continuity of supply, and their response.
Just a question on page 62, and it's on under the key projects, and they got pipeline renewals, Chalmers Ave, Malcolm Street, Elizabeth Street, etc. Would it probably be more helpful for us if you reported how many metres of pipe you replaced, or did you do the whole street? Because this is indicating to me you did the whole street. Well, I know that's not what you did.
Yeah, that would be an easy addition.
Yeah, and that flows through in wastewater as well, the key projects, on how much pipe you actually did replace, and the same for probably roading as well, how many metres or kilometres, that sort of stuff. To make the report a little bit more meaningful. Questions? We can move to 1.2 wastewater. Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I just noticed on the news last week, actually, there was a town just north of Wellington that has stopped any further developments and subdivisions because their sludge has reached the capacity and they can't process anymore. I suppose I'm just asking for an assurance from you guys that we'll never get into that situation in our district.
Yeah, we've got capacity for growth, and where we don't necessarily have capacity, there are things you can do to address that. So we've got an in-committee report coming shortly where we're proposing to do some mitigations to address a growth impact.
Councillor Wilson.
It's to do on page 63. It's to do with compliance with resource consents. I bring it up because obviously within our district, farmers, constantly being hammered about not being compliant and that. So I look at the council to make sure we're compliant. I see we had an abatement notice, which have alleviated. But do we have other any lower level consent compliance issues that we have? An abatement notice is as serious as it gets. You go to jail after that, pretty much. So below that, do we have? Where are they recorded?
Yeah, so we do have lower level compliance reports We'll usually circulate some of these issues that we're dealing with through the activity briefings, so you'll see them listed there. We put a lot of effort around documenting our response to some of those things. You remember we developed an action plan to address some of the non-compliances around Ashburton wastewater. So yeah, they do get visibility through that process.
Move on to the next 1.3, stormwater. Councillor Wilson.
Within this year, we've had the Carters Creek issue bubbling away and happening a lot. Does that show up here, or is it more ECAN's issue from our point of view?
Yeah, this is reporting on our network, so it's our network performance, not that waterway.
So when it leaves, so is that are there any open channels in this one, or is it all piped? Just to understand the.
We will have a few outfall drains from our network, and that's included in here in terms of levels of service. But the performance of Carters Creek certainly isn't included in this.
The cameras and the rain gauges at those 4 stormwater attenuation facilities, are they publicly available?
Not at this point. We use it for tracking, operational tracking.
There's no reason why they couldn't be.
I'd have to talk to some more technically oriented people than myself to make that call.
Councillor Mackel.
Yeah, Andy, are those areas alarmed if there's a problem?
No, it's purely just a camera basically eyeballing the detention facilities, just so that we can track how quickly they're filling and whether we have to respond.
Just by way of a bit of explanation around the key projects, so this all forms the basis for our council's annual report that is being prepared at the moment. So there'll be a bit more commentary and guidance or information put around these key projects just to buff them up a bit, give us some more explanation.
So these things we've asked for, like metres of pipe, they could be going to the annual report.
Yep.
Stock water, page 67. Councillor Wilson.
Would a key project not have been the consultation on shutting them?
We do cover that under the democracy and governance section.
Transportation, page 68. And again, the metres of what was done would be helpful, or kilometres. Waste reduction and recovery, page 70. Tony.
Thank you. Just interested, the volume of recyclable material is down. But obviously you can only recycle what is put out. But I would have think with population growth that even though it's slow, that sort of cycle would be slowly increasing. But it's interesting that it's back than what it should be.
That appears to be the reason. There's just a reduction in volume, I guess, due to people not buying less material. It's a bit of a speculative assessment, I suppose, but that's all that the team can put it down to at this stage.
Moving on to governance, page 72. Might be my computer, but there's one bullet point right at the bottom, it's just cut off. Social
did notice that. I can read it out if you like. So
okay.
It says Social Pinpoint was installed as the new community engagement platform and used for the first time for the long-term plan 24-34 engagement.
Thank you. Community grants and funding, page 73. Economic Development, 74. Community Services, 75.
Just a question,
Councillor McMillan.
please. Under the key projects, was the Digby toilets not included in that, or is that when, I couldn't remember when they were built.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm pretty sure they were commissioned in the 23-24
Yeah.
year, so we can include the annual
Thank
plan
you.
report, sorry.
2.5 Parks and Open Spaces. Just a little bit more detail on the playground upgrades, which ones did get them an upgrade. I know they all didn't, but some did. The words other park projects is,
We don't have that information here, but we can certainly add it.
oh,
Yep.
and it says other park projects. I'm no wiser. Either leave it out or put the projects in.
We'll beef that up for the annual report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Recreation facilities. Oh, sorry, Linnea.
I'm just going back to the playground upgrades because I know the actual domain one was up for upgrade, and it would be nice to know perhaps which ones have been upgraded, because we've talked about the Ashburton domain money spent in there for years. We've done the Flying Fox, but yeah, has there been work in there without us physically driving out these and having a look? It would be nice to kind of know.
77 recreation facilities. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Just under the library and the free public internet sessions, and we're not meeting our target because many residents have their own devices. Do we need to change that target number of 40,000? And can we do that easily, or because there's no point having a target if we're not going to meet it every time?
Thank you, through the chair. So through the long-term plan, we have reset the performance framework from this year going forward. I can't remember specifically what we did with that one, but I'm sure, that's been a consistent trend, is that it's under what the target has been for the last couple of years. So I'm sure that we've addressed it through that.
Three, regulatory services. Building regulation. District planning, 7081. Emergency management, 83. Land information, 84. Regulatory compliance, 85. Councillor Lovett.
Just looking at the compliance with the contractors attending incidents with 1 hour, I'm just thinking if where the contractors based, where's the time taken from in Ashburton here? Because if they're going out to Mayfield or Mount Somers, is because they're always going to fall out of the time of the 1 hour time zone. Is there allowances made for that?
Through the chair, my understanding is that the contractors are based primarily in Ashburton, but they do circulate throughout the district. But yes, there will be circumstances, I would imagine, where it does become very difficult for them to circulate. I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact answer on that at the moment, but I can certainly follow up on it and ask what the measures are in place for that.
Because there's a few kind of not been met, and I thought, well, you can't meet that target if it's.
Just through, Mr Mayor, the principal reason they weren't met is because the time of arrival wasn't recorded. It's not that it was outside the time, but we simply can't claim that it was because it wasn't recorded. So that that conversation has happened with the contractor. We assume now that that is tidied up. It'll now become clear whether they actually comply with the measure, but these non-compliances weren't about necessarily late arrival, it was that we couldn't confirm they were on time.
Councillor Wilson?
It's an overall sort of question that, the very last word is, this has been addressed. How do we as councillors, and I know we set for activity briefings, but we won't really know until this report comes back next year. How will we know that when you've said this has been addressed, how do we know it's been addressed?
Thank you, through the chair. So there's a 6-monthly report of this that comes to council early in the new year. So that's a bit of a signal of how the first 6 months of a financial year have gone. And I might hand over to Ian if he's got anything further to add from the actual specific activity side.
Through the chair, no, that would be my answer as well.
In the activity briefings in the regulatory department, I asked the questions of, there's very little detail in the regulatory side of it for dogs and liquor licensing, and we're told that we get a report once a year to update us. Is this the report? It's not. Right.
No, there's a separate dog control report that's required.
Right, okay. Next one is, that's it. There's recommendation there that council receives the end of year non-financial performance report. So I'd like to move.
I'll move.
Seconded. Councillor Hooper. Open for discussion. Was receiving it, so all in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. Item number 9, end of year strategy and plan progress report, page 87. Any further to add to the report?
No, nothing further, apart from, I guess, we have decided this year to report against all of the strategies and plans that we have, just because some of them have quite a long period between reports, so we thought it was prudent to include everything as part of it. So that's why the length of the report is quite long.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
I missed what you said. We have decided this year to what? I just missed what you said.
We thought it was prudent this year to report against all of the strategies and plans that we have.
Ashburton Airport Development Plan 22 to 52. Questions? Number 2, domain development plan. Councillor Lovett.
I was just going back to the airport plan about the power, water and fibre, and you've got by 2052. It would be nice to know when they're going to start working on it, this year or next year or 2 years, because it's a long way out. And if we're trying to develop the airport, I'd like to think that we're considering putting water out there and fibre in the line.
Water is out there, and it'll be in the long-term plan if it's programmed, which we just completed.
Yeah.
If it's not in those first 3 years, then it won't be happening in the 3 years.
No. So, through Mr Mayor, that's exactly right. This is the plan that council adopted. So there was a 30-year horizon on that initiative, and until it comes into either an annual plan or an LTP, then you can expect us to continue to say not completed. So it will be up ultimately to council to bring that project forward as a priority. It won't otherwise happen with, the 30 years is a long term.
Yeah.
Councillor Cameron?
Our arts, culture and heritage strategy, is that, we only discussed it the long-term plan, is that why it's not there? Or?
Thank you, through the chair. Yes, that's correct. It doesn't exist at this point in time. It's programmed for year 2 of the long-term plan.
I missed that again. What was that? It's programmed for what?
Year 2. So.
Oh, okay. So we're not putting all our strategies in here, just the ones currently open.
Sorry, through the chair, it doesn't exist right now. We have to go and start from ground zero to build one. So we'll do
Okay, I
that
just thought it would be planning in there, you know, upcoming or some mention.
We're just going to raise the volume of the speakers so we can get better hearing.
I just think it was the cough.
The domain development plan. Climate resilience plan 2022. Page 97, the Lake Camps and Clearwater plan, 30-year plan. Councillor Macmillan.
Thank you. Just, I'll try and find it again. Some of the actions or comments as supporters coming from the Otu Wharekai working group. So that group, does that end up reporting back to our council? I know it's mainly staff on that group. How does that information come through to council to know that we're on track with that?
Thank you, through the chair. So, yes, in reference to 1.1.5, that's at that officer to officer level where there is updated science and information that is passed along to council for information. The way the Otu Wharekai group has been set up is there's many layers to it, but there is an overarching leadership, mana to mana type group, and that's where our mayors sit alongside each other and have those discussions. But I don't think there's been a meeting for a while now, so it's led out of ECAN at this point.
So perhaps we need to investigate it. That's a bit more follow up on that.
It might be worth following up, please. Yeah.
Councillor Wilson.
Obviously, the lake level is being discussed after that, but it will have been still discussed previously. Where would it filter through in this report? Because this is sort of our view of up there, effectively, isn't it? And what we see. So that's quite hot on the community's thoughts. So where would it come through in this report? Because I don't see it mentioned anywhere in the comments.
Through Mr. Mayor, this is a report against the plan.
Yeah.
So that plan didn't include reference to the low levels because that's an emerging issue, if you like, that is subject to separate conversations and understanding. This is simply a report against the plan as it was adopted.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. We're doing an MOU around camping ground fees and charges. Is that going to come to council or are staff doing that?
Sorry, through the chair. We hadn't proposed to bring it to council, but we can. It's understanding what the camp want to charge and then what we need to recoup ourselves in way of costs. So I need to do a bit more investigation before I can answer that 100%. Would you prefer us to bring it here?
Yeah, because around fees and charges, we set the fees at Rangitada, we set them Timor Domain. I think it would be a good idea to see some consistency maybe and see these ones as well.
Through the chair, we won't be setting the fees as such because it is not our camp. They manage the camp, as I understand it.
Yeah.
I think it is our camp. We have an MOU with them on how it operates.
We don't receive the income.
No, you don't. Those monies are used to improve or enhance the camping area, but definitely an MOU would be handy to know who does what, especially for understanding. It's the last letter of the three, is memorandum of understanding. Yeah. So yes, it should probably come to council, I would think, so we all know what the understanding is.
Okay.
Councillor Macmillan.
Thank you. Mine's sort of along the same line. 3.1.1, page 100. work alongside the Lake Camp and Clearwater community for the betterment of the area, and that's going to be achieved through an MOU. So is that sort of a one-stop shop MOU that includes the campground, the betterment, etc.? Is that, and where are we tracking with that MOU? I mean, I know some of the councillors are invited to go up to the hut holders AGM each year, which we try and do.
Through the chair, as I understand it, the MOU is the catch-all document that is going to encompass all the different facets that lay up there. As I understand it, it has been drafted, and I think it's sitting with the community at this stage.
Okay, thank you.
And that 3.1.1 has been raised in the last few weeks, referring to this document about what council should, could or must be doing up there. So having a clearer idea of what it means would be great. Councillor Todd.
Mine was also a 3.1.1, so that includes the lake. It's not just the surrounding areas, it's the whole area, is it? No, I just wasn't too sure that it included the lake or not.
We call it the community, the Lake and Camp and Clearwater community. So, Councillor Cameron.
Thanks. Point 3.2.2, investigate restrictions on motorbike and four-wheel drive access to key areas, which we had that workshop, didn't we? Talked about access to the lake and restricting access to the lake, and we were going to put some things in to do all that. In the comments and progress, we've got C 1.2.2. If we go up to 1.2.2,
There's one.
it is saying compliance and development group, open spaces, blah, blah. Date by 30th of June 23, yes, and ongoing, and yes, and we've got about a brochure in that. How do we know whether we're on track and whether it's completed or where we are? Like, you know, on a little ruler, are we 75%? Like, it's just got yes and ongoing.
Through the chair, so there's sort of two parts to that that piece of work up there. There's been actual physical restrictions put in place to stop four-wheel drives and motorbikes from going around the sensitive areas at the back of Lake Camp. As well as that, there's been the educative campaign to make sure everyone's aware of why we don't want those vehicles around that space. I guess it's ongoing because it will forever be ongoing. Humans are humans, and we like to test a rule and test a boundary.
Okay. May I ask an additional question? We've got an educational brochure produced 3rd of October 2022 that they can get out either here or ECAN or Department of Conservation. Is there something, I haven't been up, I was up about 6 months ago. Is there a sign there with little brochures in it, or how do you get them if you're up there and you've somehow missed Department of Conservation or ECAN or the library? Which most people would miss all those things, don't they?
Yeah, through the chair, I know that there are copies of the newsletter at the Mount Somers store, or the pamphlet at the Mount Somers store, and I believe that there was some with staff from the various agencies as well. So if they were out and about, there's also, I think, a pamphlet in at least one of the community poster boards that are up at the lake as well, so that they're visible for the people up there too.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Ian.
2.2.5 and 0.6, it just says they're completed. It would be probably more helpful to show what you've completed.
Yep, noted. We'll include that for next time.
Moving through Ashburton Town Centre Parking Management Group. Plan, sorry. More development plan. Councillor Ellis.
Yep, on page 103 we've got consider the implementation of a system to continuously monitor car park occupancy that is integrated with parking enforcement. We had that. What happened to all those monitors? Did they just get thrown away in the town centre redevelopment? We had them in the parking spaces. It gave us some really good information. We fought for a long time to get them, and now we need budget to put them back again when we had them.
Through the chair, my understanding of that is that there was a study that was done during and after the parking, after the CBD upgrade, and it was decided that going to a digital chalk option was, at least at the time, a better and more efficient way of I guess dealing with parking than actually the installation of more equipment. I believe it's slightly more complicated than that, but I would have to check with Mr. Catchpole about that as to the exact reasons why the technical system didn't work.
So may report back on that then. Councillor Todd?
Thank you. Just bottom page 102, to facilitate EV charging, do we know the percentage of EVs that are on the road? Like, that are passing through the town? Like, we don't know what the demand is.
No, we've got no one counting the EVs. I'm sorry, Councillor.
Yeah. I suppose we'd know by the number of new registrations. I suppose give you an idea, but
No, I'm not aware that
Yeah.
we've got them. The only statistical information that we sometimes receive is in the office is the percentage of new vehicles that are EVs as a percentage of the new vehicles sold in New Zealand.
That's right.
But to be fair, I haven't even seen that stat for a good number of months. I used to come from the EV
That's right.
people,
Yeah.
and I guess they're not currently sending those stats out.
So we haven't identified an area where we would put EV charging if it became a demand for, like in the town centre.
No, and we haven't detected that demand
Yeah.
yet.
We're also aware that the government say they're going to roll it out, but whether they include Ashburton or not, I don't know. Yeah.
No.
There are EV chargers in town.
Yeah.
Waste minimisation plan, page 105. Oh, sorry, we'll go past the Dimwald. Till domain development plan, you're up, page 104. So there's no actions identified in the plan.
Correct.
Is that normal?
Unusual to how we do a plan now, but might have been common at that point in time. I suppose the development plan outlines the end goal or the end state of what the community and the Reserve Board and Council at that point in time wanted to see for the area. So it's helping to guide decision making and opportunities for development along the way.
Does it require updating then or not?
I think that's a question we could put back to the
What's
Timwell
complete?
domain.
We're not detecting a latent demand for a review or update at this point, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Waste minimisation plan, page 105. Biodiversity strategy 107, only recently been adopted. Economic development strategy, page 108. Making progress. Page 122, open spaces strategy. Page 123, parking strategy. I think that open spaces strategy, it comes up later in the document, so we'll come back to it. Parking strategy. play active recreation and sports strategy. Surface water strategy, that comes up again later in the document. Walking and cycling strategy.
Just under the cycling strategy, it talks about the number somewhere, I couldn't just find it now, of cycle parks, and I've asked the question before. For here, I think there's only the one available to the public out the front out there, which doesn't hold many cycles. Are there any plans for more cycle parking around the library area?
Not currently. We keep it under review, but we don't see the parks that are available. Put another way, the parks that are available seem to be coping with the number of cycles that are being parked. But that's not to say that if we detected that they were no longer adequate, that we wouldn't want to do some further parking.
Open spaces strategy. Surface water strategy, page 148. That's the last one.
Can I
Oh,
just
Councillor
ask
Vella.
just a general question? So, there's money in the budget to update the Methven Community Strategic Plan. I know the last one was done in 2009. Should that have sat in this list of plans, or does it sort of come under something else? Or are we waiting for the new one?
Thank you, through the chair. There's a whole suite of those community level plans that were generated around about that period in time that have not been refreshed since. So while we could report against them here, we think that it's probably almost redundant to at this stage. They've sort of dropped away from focus and priority for some of the communities, and other matters have arisen. So I guess once the Methven Strat Plan is updated, then yes, it could form a part of this annual reporting. In terms of the rest, I think we would need to take council direction whether we want to roll out a refresh across the board or not.
So does, another question if that's okay, so does every small town, so Rakaia has a community plan, Mayfield, Hines,
Mount Summers.
They all do?
Yes.
At the start?
But they are 15, 16, 17 years old now.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. Just looking on page 127 on Stella, and the Sports Active Recreation Sports Strategy, 2.1a, continue a regular sports forum and explore widening its membership. And it's got led by Community Services Group of ADC in partnership with Sports Canterbury. And it's ongoing, not much has happened, not applicable. And then it's got, this is Sports Canterbury action. So if it's a Sports Canterbury action, why have we got it led by Community Services Group of ATC?
Through the chair, that was at that point in time when this strategy was being developed, that was the intention of the officers at that stage, was that it would be led within. But now with changes, it is more of a Sport Canterbury function in which council could support and partner with. Just as an aside to that, I'm having conversations with Sport Canterbury at the moment around their performance measures for the 24-25 year, and this was one of the discussion points was around what
Okay,
the
so
target
that will
would be.
either be removed or amended or corrected or whatever.
What we do is we don't go and change the action plan, because that was the council's direction at that point in time,
Okay.
but we'd be able to update whatever the decision making or the
Okay.
focus and intention is when we're reporting back.
Because if I can make a comment, Mr Mayor, a lot of the actions in this particular strategy are ongoing, will be ongoing forever when you read the strategy. It doesn't look like a lot has not been achieved, and I presume that if you're fit, you've got to keep fit, so it's an ongoing activity. But they do rely on, Sport Canterbury, and it's difficult, I suppose, when you're doing a strategy, when you're relying on someone else to input into it. I don't know what we can do about that, but perhaps that needs some thought as to how we can move it along,
Through the chair, that's an age-old challenge when it comes to these strategies that do cross over and require councils to work in partnership with different agencies. What could be the plan today? In 3 or 4 months' time, an agency might no longer exist, or might have really resourced up to be able to deliver far more than what we ever anticipated. So
or they might.
we just keep leaning in and keep the relationship strong
Yeah.
and work together to reflect the needs.
And they get new staff and they might not appreciate the value of whatever has been decided in the plan, I imagine.
Through Mr Mayor, I think to a number of these actions are always going to be ongoing. And if you look at the language, explore, continue to promote, encourage, assist, explore, continue, so that they aren't definitive measures that are going to be completed and done and gone and boxes ticked. They are ongoing work. So you're going to likely to see this type of reporting and type of achievement when the measures themselves are very much an ongoing work program. Yep.
We've got the end of those reports. There's a recommendation there that we receive the end of year strategy and plan progress report 23-24. Councillor Cameron moved.
I'd like to move that, thank you.
Seconded, Councillor Lovett. And put the motion all in favour, please say aye. Carried, thank you. There's good progress there, but as always, there's always more to do as well. Thank you for that. Next item is the financial variance report, page 161. And we'll go through the pages page by page. 163. Got questions as we go. 164. 165.
Just a quick
Councillor
question.
Cameron.
Thank you. Income and expenditure, I'm going back, sorry, to 164, revenue rates. It looks like we're $800,000 more, we're $807,000 more than forecast. Is that because we've had more homes built, or how do you, if that's a...
So that's exactly right, through the mayor. They have, when we set the annual plan, we base it on what we know at the time, and then when the rates are actually struck, that information is the most up to date that we can have, and usually there are new properties going
New
on
properties.
for rateable.
That's a lot of new properties, isn't it? Yeah. Thank you.
166, 67. Just on 167 under roading is a unfavourable of 2.2, and it talks about the 1 million of the 2.2. The other 1.2, where's that attributed to of unfavourable variance?
Through the chair, NZTA gave us 2 batches of 1 million. One was for emergency works and the other one was for our rehab work. And of course, of that, 51% is what they provided us. So we had to fund the 49% of that additional money.
168, drinking water. 169, 170. 171 wastewater. 172, 173. 174, 175. 176, 177. 178, 179. 180, 181. 182, 183. 184, 85. 186, 87. 188, 89. 190, 191. 192, 193. 194, 95. 96, 197. 198, 199. 200. Just on 200, the loan repayments, it's supposed to be 7 million, you've done 5. You'll catch the other 2 up. Is that the plan?
Yes, that's the plan.
Great. 201, 202. 203. Councillor Wilson.
It's a point of interest almost. So the borrowing by activity, when we say wastewater and drinking water, that's all the debt that we have against that, because obviously it's quite topical in the news as to what debt you have against those assets. So we effectively have around $50 million debt against our Two Waters assets, should say, and that's against an income of around the income that we gain from that water. What would that be? Because I've looked back. Can you?
So the work we did the other day was around 15 million of revenue and around 51, because we include stormwater in that, around $51 million of debt. So if you took the 5 to 1 that's currently being bandied around, there'd be capacity then to increase debt to around 75. You have to be servicing the increased debt, so it might get to sort of 80 by the time you increased your revenue to match the increased debt. But it's that order of numbers, yep.
204, 5. 206. 2 takes us to the end of any further questions. Recommendation there that we receive the financial report, variance report. And mover. Councillor Todd. Councillor Hooper. All in favour, please say aye. Thank you for that. Next item is the Mayor's report. Item number 11. And questions. Councillor Wilson.
You've talked about in there about the remits at the local body thing. How will we decide on our views on them? So obviously you want to understand our views, so when you've got there you could make an informed decision when you're voting.
We can go through that right now. I've got a table here and we can start with, there's 8 of them. You'll have read them. Do you support them or don't you support them? And the first one is the representation review from the Waikato Regional Council. Do you wish me to support their remit or not? I need guidance.
Page 217.
It's on page 217. Yep. I'm hoping you would have read an informed decision, not read it now.
I just had a question around that. May I ask a question? Could you probably have a better understanding of it? Is this not census data? Like how are we going to get this improved information? What are they actually asking for?
The way I read this was that the current way that data is available is inadequate.
Yeah, yes.
So whatever the actual solution is, this remit is about LGNZ advocating for changes to improve it. So I don't think it addresses the specific nature of the solution, but that the status quo or the current position is inadequate, particularly for regional councils' needs.
And I think we've identified that even locally, haven't we? So I think that's a good thing, but it seems a bit airy-fairy and non-specific, but I would support that remit.
Oh, I would too. Does the majority support? Yeah. Next one's Community Services card from Palmerston North Council, City Council. Councillor Vaughan?
I'm guessing this is in relation to the rates rebate as well, so that they can use the community services card. They'd use that anyway, wouldn't they?
Can they use it now for that purposes of what they're asking for?
It was wider than rates rebate as I read it. In fact, they referred to eligibility for social housing.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's more generally for council services than it's specifically about rates rebates. Yep.
That makes sense.
Councillor Cameron?
Thank you. It's got in here that this is the background. Councils are restricted from requesting a community services card as evidence of eligibility to access services. And we've got to get other documents to test their eligibility. Would that be like a swimming pool? If they want to go for a swim, they show the community services card. Are they not allowed to do that, ask for that?
Potentially, it doesn't specifically talk about swimming pools, but I think what the remit is more generally about is that there are limitations, and it would be useful if the card could be used for all council services. I don't know whether swimming pools is in or out, to be honest, but they do refer to eligibility for social housing, and there may well be any number of others.
Yeah. I personally probably do not support that. I don't think we need to be sharing everybody's information with council, so I probably do not support that. But I'm happy to go with the flow.
Okay, others? Richard, Councillor Wilson?
I probably don't support it because I think that if a person has a community services card, there are other benefits other agencies which you access to give you funding. So you have to be careful that just because you've got a card, that gives you more benefits. So because every benefit that the council gives, someone else has to pay on the other side to balance out that benefit. So it just worries me a wee bit that because what level of benefit do you give? And there's a whole lot of cost.
I think it's less about whether they qualify, it's about how they demonstrate eligibility. And at the moment, they can't use the community services card as an easy way of demonstrating that they qualify. The ratepayer or the user of the service is required to demonstrate that they qualify through some other means. So it's not opening up, well, as I read anyway, it's not opening up eligibility and now there's a whole host of new benefits. It is trying to simplify the proof of eligibility.
Councillor Lovett?
I think we need to really have a good look at it when the discussion is held, where they're aiming for. It should only ever be used up as a backup for legal documents, never the first thing that's put up. I just don't know where they're heading with it, but I think we better, just need to be careful with it, how it's going to be used. Because I don't think that the ones with community service cards should be better off than you and I, or whoever hasn't got one. Whether that's the streamline they're aiming for, or is it for proving document use on legal stuff?
Don't know, but there's a reason they have a community services card.
Yes.
That's right, they've already done their proving.
But everyone has a birth certificate and other documents. And
I think the example is on the one to think is in the bottom of page 218,
whereas Cabinet had to specifically pass regulations to enable the community services card to be used for public transport. It's not that people aren't entitled to whatever benefit they get, it's that without the ability to use the community services card, it's just far harder to access the benefit they're entitled to. So this is far more about access to existing benefits than it is about eligibility.
Councillor McMillan?
I'd support it if it's just sort of a form of means testing, which they have said in there. I don't know how relevant it is to our council. It would be interesting to find out, but obviously Palmerston North, I think this is a good proposal, so yeah, I'm happy to support.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. I also support these people probably already filled in a myriad of paperwork to get their community services card. This is just simplifying it. They can then use that card as proof that they have filled that paperwork in and don't need to do so 12 times again. I think it is simplifying things.
Yeah, then it gives them eligibility to get concessions. Yeah, Councillor Cameron?
I'm all for eligibility to get concessions, but I'm very, very anti sort of everybody knowing everybody's business. I think it should, and it may become a rule that in councils that they show their community services card to demonstrate that they meet some affordability or lack of affordability criteria.
That's what this is trying to do.
Yeah, and I don't support any lack of privacy, that type of thing. Well, however else the person who's applying for that chooses to demonstrate that they meet the criteria.
I'm not sure what information the card holds that someone would get off it.
Oh, I'm blowed if I
think it's
know
a matter
either,
of
but I
showing
don't
the
like
card
it.
to show you can get you're eligible for a concession. Just show the card.
That's all they're doing. And it's not compulsory. So if the person did not want the council to know that they were eligible, then don't show the card
that's
and pay,
as long as it's not
and
the
then
sole,
pay the full price.
Then I have no problem with it, as long as it's not the sole form of identification that council embrace, and people can say, well, I'm not showing you, I'll give you something else.
No, it's not about identification, it's about demonstrating eligibility.
Yeah, well, demonstrating, yeah. I understand, yeah.
Is that a yes? Next one, local government constituencies and wards should not be subject to referendum. By the Palmerston North City Council. And LGNZ, Councillor Wilson.
I don't support this one. One person, one vote. I know it's the most contentious issue that will be talked about at LGNZ, but I think it's something we need to. We've actually seen the outcome at ECAM with their representation review, which is not the same as this, but it is the same sort of outcome where we've had 16 councillors there. It would have been a hung proportion, but the government, through its wisdom, had 2 other councillors enacted which aren't part of the representation review, and they twisted the vote to be the way it is. If I look at page 224, they've suggested that why then impose a binding referendum that allows people not directly affected by the result to determine the outcome. That's exactly what's happened at ECAM. So I support them on that level, but I don't support going down the picking our democracy by race. I'm afraid we need to. Everybody in this room represents everybody in the district, regardless of race, creed, social background, everything. So I don't see that. But this one here is almost in Parliament they call it a conscience vote, rather than it's your political views, it's the way you view the world, rather than actually a straight one. So.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you. I also speak against the motion. Interesting that, in my mind, all the coalition has done is revert back to the original decision, which was to allow communities to have a say on Maori wards. And it was during the last government where Minister Mahuta changed the rules. And in my mind, she was the one who overreached and brought it on to councils only to make the decision. I believe it should be a community decision as to whether we have Maori wards or not.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. I agree that the people have their say.
Councillor McMillan.
I think it's more about whether it should be subject to a referendum or not. And I think, we've just gone through the representation review, and we said we want a Western ward, we want an Eastern ward, and we want a town ward. And if we'd made a decision and then it had gone back to a referendum, I don't think we're very happy about it. I know this is about Māori wards, and I know it's very contentious, but Mr. Mayor, I'm going to leave this vote up to you, I think. I don't know. It's a tricky one.
Shall I make a conscience vote on the day? 4, entrenchment of Māori ward seats for local government. Same issue. Councillor Todd?
Same issue, and my response is the same, Mr. Chair. I don't believe government should entrench anything into law that stays permanently. Future governments should be able to change decisions if they wish, because things do change. So I'm against the entrenchment of that situation.
Councillor Wilson?
I follow the same with entrenchment. I don't agree with that. It's up to we elect a national government of nationalism, not national Labour, a government of our country, and they make the decisions, and everything else has to abide by it. It all falls down from there. We can't just say we're not going to lock it in now and not let it be changed in the future, because things can change.
Leave to my conscience vote on the day. You want yes or no? No.
And to be fair, the previous one, there was 3 of us that spoke against it. Should we not maybe have a vote on that?
Can if you wish. We'll tidy this one up, then we'll go back and do a vote on the other one. We'll put this one to the vote. All those who want to support the motion, the remit, sorry. Raise your hand. All those against? So no. Go back to number 3, local government constituencies and wards should not be subject to referendum. All those who are yes for that, raise your hand. All those against it, raise your hand. No. So it's a no as well. Right. Next one, 5, graduated driver's licensing system, which has been put forward by the Ashburton District Council. I take that as a yes. Yeah. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, do you have to present on this one, or how does it work at the thing?
Yeah, probably, more than likely. But Councillor Wilson, you'll be there and you can if you wish. Item number 6 is proactive lever to mitigate the deterioration of unoccupied buildings. I'd support that. We have one of them in town.
Correct.
Councillor Todd?
I support it too, and under that I said we have a building in town as well. So I think when you see the photos in Gisborne, like it's just so detrimental to the town centre that council should have a role to play in the direction of decision making on buildings.
All agree yes there. Number 7, appropriate funding models for central government initiatives. It's on page 259. So the development of more equitable and appropriate funding model for central government initiatives. Support? Yes. Number 8, the goods and services revenue sharing with local government. Try it, yes. Good direction, thank you.
Can I ask a question, please? General question. We do these remits every year. Do we know how successful they've been? Like, do we have a sort of a score sheet of a lot of them talk about influence, like influence central government, so local government can do this, that, and the other. Have we had any successes?
Yeah, in the local government, the agenda we've just received for the local government
Yeah.
conference, it's in there.
Okay.
So I'm not sure whether you get that or not because you're not.
I haven't
attending
got
the
one, but I
conference.
can look it up. I can look it up on
Look
the
it up.
internet.
It's in there. How they went last year. Other items of the mayor's report. 11.3, Councillor Cameron.
No, that was my question.
11.3 Lake Camp workshop. We had the workshop last Wednesday, I think it was, and from that workshop we listened to the scientist from ECAN, the manager from DOC, and the CEO of Fish and Game South Island, and gathered information, and there's been lots of talk about it since. So I have a recommendation there, and it reads: the council, should it decide to pursue an application for consent to divert the Belmacan stream into Lake Camp, we call for an officer's report to understand the costs and the implications of this. Questions? Oh. Right. Yeah, we've just got two words around the wrong way there. Should council. Put the words around the should behind the council. In front of the council, I should say. Councillor Lovett.
I would like to see council do something in this space, even if it's with the hut holders up there. But I'd like to, I think we need some report come to us. The consent has lapsed. Can it be reactivated, or
No.
it has to be a whole new consent?
Correct.
And
The consent hasn't lapsed, it has been surrendered.
it's been
There is
surrendered.
no consent currently, so should there be a desire to go through that process, somebody has to apply for a new consent.
So I think we have to look at this for the benefit of the community, the whole community, or the Ashburton district. It's not just the hut holders, it affects everybody, and it is a aquatic pond that everyone takes their boats and picnics and everything else, and it is a biodiversity space. But if this diversion's been operating for 50 odd years, I think we do have a responsibility to try and look at what the costings, or whether we can get ECAN and DOC and everybody on board and all progress
Are
together.
you coming up with a question?
I think we should, yeah.
Why don't we get a move in a second with the recommendation, then we can debate it. There's a
I have some questions.
Right, question it.
Okay, my question is, if we got officers to do a report to understand the costs and implications, I think we had a very detailed discussion, and I think we understand the implications. What the cost of the report is for our local officers, so you're suggesting team Ashburton District Council do a report, is that what this motion's suggesting? Would they pay for a consultant to do that report, or would they do it in-house? Do we have the skills?
I think we can do the report internally. The report is going to repeat some of the things that you heard at the workshop, and I'm sure it is going to refer to the need for various studies and reports to be done as part of any consent application. And we heard about, ECAN talk about hydrological reports. We heard DOC talk about lizard management plans. We heard a number of things that would be expected to be part of a consent application. And so the officers, no doubt, in preparing that report, will refer to the need to prepare those things if somebody, council perhaps, is to apply for a consent. And I would hope that our report, if asked, would indicate the many number of months that will require to get some of that information together, and might even reflect on the chances of success given everything we heard the other day. But that report can be prepared internally.
So, additional clarification, please. So, when that report is prepared internally, Hamish, that would then presumably mean that the person who is doing that report is not doing another report or doing something else, what would the cost of that report be, ballpark? You know, if you're thinking of staff and, you know, the whole, do they need to get expert
Yes,
opinions and
I
stuff?
understand. I mean, there's always an opportunity cost to doing one piece of work
Yeah,
and not
yeah,
another.
that's right.
But there won't be a out-of-pocket cost to prepare that
Thank
report. It will simply be time.
Business
Thank
as
you.
usual.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Todd?
Thank you. When the consent lapsed or was surrendered, whose responsibility is it to advise that that has happened? Like, it's been 4 years and it's sat there. Like, who controls that?
So Fish and Game held a consent from ECAN,
Yeah.
and they advised ECAN that they no longer wished to hold that consent, i.e. they advised ECAN that it was to lapse.
Yeah.
So that happened in 2020, as I understand. No doubt Fish and Game advised ECAN that the consent was lapsed.
So whose role is it to initiate a consent? Like, should it be ECAN?
No. So ECAN are the regulator. ECAN will be the body to consider somebody else's application. So ECAN won't be applying for the consent. Somebody else has to. And in the past, the previous consent, that was Fish and Game who applied for and held the consent. And I think we heard at the workshop that that was primarily around fish spawning and not recreation purposes.
Yeah.
If somebody else wants to apply for a consent, then they will need to get on and do that.
So if no one applies for a consent, where does it sit? Like
Sorry, I missed that last bit.
So if no one applies for a consent, where does that sit? After that, is it goes back to ECAN?
It'll just continue as the diversion not being consented activity. So
Nothing will happen.
So nothing will happen.
Okay.
And I think we also heard at the workshop that the diversion does require a consent, and it was really clear. And secondly, that it also requires a permit from DOC. So the consent is not the only regulatory approval that is needed. And in fact, I think we heard the DOC officials confirm that it would make sense for them to work together on the consent application information with ECAN, so that it was a little bit of a contemporaneous process. But at least in theory, one of those, that they both need it before you could do a new diversion.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. Within that report, if we decide to do that, I think we need a cost-benefit analysis. At the time you most need the water, the minimum flows in that stream are not there to support the lake level. So you might go through great expense and endeavour to get a consent, but when you actually need to use it, it's of no use to you because the water's not available. So I think we need to do some work around that as well. I think also implications are that if we decide to go with this today, I think it'll give maybe false hope to those who most want this, that the hut holders in that community, and it probably will stop them doing anything else, thinking that we're then doing all the work. So I think there's a risk in that as well. But I believe there's could be a lot of work done for a lot of great difficulty to not get anywhere.
And the recommendation here is to see what work is required to go that next stage. So there would be one more decision after that once a report was obtained, if we wanted to do that. Councillor Mackel.
The division race was put in the 60s for the reason to top up said lake. In my mind, that decision was made when there was a hell of a lot more common sense within councils, etc. And Fish and Game handed in their consent without letting Ashburton District Council know. At that time, before they handed that in, would Ashburton Council been able to take over that consent without this process happening now?
I don't know. That counterfactual doesn't exist. I'm not sure whether there was an opportunity 4 years ago. but it wasn't taken even if it did exist. So, but I don't actually know the answer to that. I'm sorry, Councillor, we can find out, but it historically didn't happen that way, so.
Yeah. So with ECAN now, it looks to me like just a money-grabbing exercise, an opportunity for them to grab money for this consent. But regardless of that, under the RMA or whatever it is, I asked a question the other day, and even Peter Scott shot me down saying it was a leading question, but it was a legitimate question. If the lake continues to go dry, what is ECAN's responsibility? It is my understanding that at a certain level they have to step in to stop that lake going dry and act to open that diversion race and let water in. And at the moment, over the weekend, we've had snowfall that will service our needs as far as water goes going forward if that was put together now, put in place now, so we could grab that opportunity to use that water, not wait till the summer and then to decide, hey, we've got to act now, but there's a drought, so we can't. So the opportunity exists now, and we were told it was going to take at least 6 months to get that consent sorted, and we're going to spend a heap of money to do reports, etc. Time disappearing, we need to act right now, and that's at ECAN's doorstep to do that right now. So what is their position is what I wanted to know the other day. They refused to answer it. Does anyone here know their position?
They are going to let it sit unless someone successfully is granted a consent to have a new diversion race. In fact, we heard from both ECAN and DOC at the workshop that they are not currently concerned about the level of the lake from an ecological point of view. So there is no plans that I'm aware of for immediate action right now.
Understood that, Hamish, completely, but what is their position if, as Councillor Todd just asked before, what is their position if no one applies for a consent under the RMA? Nothing happens, is it?
Nothing will happen in the short term, that's for sure.
In the short term, but what's the obligation?
The reason I say the short term, Councillor, is that I can't speak for ECAN in a year's time. I don't know, but what we're hearing is that they have no current concerns, and without a consent, the diversion will not be put back in place. So certainly in terms of your contention or your message that something needs to happen right now, that is not, I can assure you that nothing is going to happen right now.
Yes, it was ECAN's view that it is not a problem at the moment. I am baffled by the groups that were here the other day for us to gather information, and the hut holders were filling up our gallery and they couldn't put a spokesman forward to represent them, and they had the information of questions that we asked the other day of how quickly that water is disappearing in front of their eyes. They had that information. Why were they not allowed to talk?
The workshop was a councillor workshop, and with our protocol we had 3 people who were to speak, and it's with us. We had the questions for them.
They weren't answering the questions we were putting to them, and directly behind them we had answers.
They were not involved in our workshop, they were there to listen.
This whole process started because of the hut holders.
The zone committee was presented with a report from Vanessa Wright, and this is where this has started, and it's come to here, and I asked for a workshop to better understand the situation, which is where we're at right now. So we've got a recommendation here which we're going to come to shortly if there's no questions, and that will either be we do further work on it or we do nothing. So you will make that decision. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The workshop told us, it gave us a lot of information, but we hadn't made a decision from that. And I'd like to know if the question is, I'd like to understand what needs to be done. If the community wants more water in the lake, what needs to be done to do that? But before you rush off and get a consent, you need to understand all the things that could, because I'm not a planner, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a cultural or environmental expert. So I would like someone to put together a report which covers water take,
DOC, their view, lizard, what you'd have to do to get a lizard plan, the wider environmental effects, the cultural effects, because obviously Carl was up there and he wanted to go back and talk, so just, what that would involve, and who else would need to be involved. Timelines, potential cost. It's not about actual cost, it's about what the council's best guess is, so then we can say, well, crikey, that's $500,000. We don't really want to spend that, or that's $2,000, just so we can understand the timeline and that. And that would actually help the community as well, I think, a lot.
If you call for that report, you will get that information.
That's what I'm happy to.
And some of those costs, councillor, will our report will have to point to the different pathways the consent application could take. For example, will ECAN require it to be publicly notified? If they do, is it likely to face objection? If there is an objection and that's strongly held, will it likely then be subject to appeal? And if those things all happen, it could be years and significant cost, but equally, if the fork in the road goes differently, then it won't cost that much. So there's the officer's report will point out the various paths this thing could take, but it's not going to be able to give you a definitive timeline, nor is it going to give an absolutely definitive cost, because it will very much depend on the path that application takes, which is not in anyone in this room's control.
Councillor McMillan?
I've put my light on to move the recommendation.
We're not there yet. I think we've got another question coming.
Yeah. What is the time, Hamish, for you to prepare this report? Like, how long would it take you to do that?
We will need. We will probably need a month, because we to give you good advice, we will have to be really careful about anticipating the sort of information that ECAN would expect in a consent. Mm-hmm. And we will need to find out what the likely cost and time of getting that information. And in the back of my mind, I recall the Dongers and the bike park.
That's right, that's what I recall.
And 12 months to get a lizard management plan.
Yeah.
And maybe it was longer than that. So we will have to contemplate those things and then try and give you best advice as to the time it might take to prepare all that, so that we could, or someone could then make an application. And I think the way I heard the 6 months was that might be from the time ECAN gets the application, and it could, it could take much longer than that to prepare the application and the specialist advice that it would require, and then it goes into the ECAN system. So there is no path I can see for really quick, needs to be done now action that involves a complicated and potentially contentious consent.
Yeah. So in that report, if we get it, it'll determine that should the zone committee be involved in this process, who in the community should be involved, who in the community should, or who should own that consent, who should pay for that consent, who should do the monitoring and the management of that consent, and all those costings that go with it.
Mr. Mayor, that will be very difficult for us to propose who should apply for the consent and what their obligations will be. I think the way I read the recommendation is that we're to do this report if council wishes to pursue the consent.
Right.
But because I can't speak for some other organisation and what process they believe they would have to follow.
Yeah,
and I don't actually think it would be particularly right for this council to recommend who should apply for the consent. This to me was about should council do it. That's the organisation we've got.
Right. Thank you for that. Councillor Cameron. Councillor Todd.
Thank you. You circulated a letter to councillors from Jeff Hyde from Lake Camp. Is it your intention to get him and Vanessa in to get their side of the argument, to get them in for a chat on their side of the argument?
We've listened to Vanessa Wright, who presented to the Zoning Committee, which is a subcommittee of council. and that was online to listen to. She presented the hut holder's view. Yeah.
And I think, Mr Mayor, the way I've read that and the follow-up from Mr Hyde is they're clearly urging council to apply for the consent. That the basis of their contention is that they need the diversion, they acknowledge it needs a consent, and that the best organisation to do that is council. So that view, I think we generally understand that perspective.
Councillor Meikle.
Thank you. We had Doc flicking up red flags all over the place about Rango the lizard. He hasn't been spotted up there since 2020 after the floods. So, but already they're making strong indications they're going to be flying that flag. And we're going to spend, once again, a heap of money trying to sort out said Rango who's not there.
I think it's almost certain that ECAN as the regulator and DOC as the permit grantor will require a formal and professional survey/lizard management plan. And that may prove there's none there, in which case the lizard management plan will be relatively straightforward. But I imagine that they are going to require, as part of the consent application, a thorough and professional examination of that issue. And my reason for referring to Ashton Beach previously is we have had our own experience of working with DOC on a lizard management plan, and after a considerable period of time, and I said a year, but I saw Sarah shaking her head, so perhaps it was longer, we did not get their permission. So whether we think there are any there, that could be true. But they will absolutely require a professional survey to say that's definitively the case. And if that survey finds some, there will be requirements to manage the impact on them before any consent is granted.
Yeah, one, I can't remember his name, sorry, but from DOC, he's said they are obviously the professionals as far as that species goes, have said they have not spotted it there since 2020. Yeah. So I'm just wondering why we have to waste money. And the other side of it is, because of the situation, can there be some sort of negotiation on the cost of this consent? Because I've indicated that it's all time, there's the application that you have to put in, the deposit as such, and then everything above that is the time involved. There was no indication that because of basically the screw up with Fish and Game, could there be some sort of negotiation on the cost of this consent, or is it just locked and loaded?
It is locked and loaded. There will be process. The process will cost whatever it costs. There won't be a simple, favourable pathway because of our relationship or a fellow councillor. If we're the ones to apply for it, we need to expect the costs to be as ECAN would expect them to be.
Councillor Cameron, last question, then we'll go to recommendation.
Okay. When we heard from the scientists at the end of the room, they said we will need to do a skink report. I don't think it's up for grabs whether we do one or not, because we haven't seen the skink. They said we need to do one. Yeah. Will the report come back with a recommendation like our other reports that you undertake?
I think this report, to give council the best possible advice before you decide to apply for a consent, will be to contemplate what we expect we will have to do as part of that consent application. So we are likely, as part of that, to say we anticipate that a lizard survey or a lizard management plan will be required, and we will anticipate, based on our own knowledge and a couple of phone calls, that it might cost X amount of dollars and take X number of months to prepare, and that will be part of the cost and the time that will be required for us to prepare the consent application. And then we'll turn our minds to, once ECAN receives the application And let's say we have all the information they need, which is potentially unlikely. Most people who apply for consents know that, you know, the regulator comes back and asks for something more or explain it differently or whatever. Then there will be time and processing costs while ECAN works through that process. And as I say, if it's notified, then that's public submissions, hearings, objections, whatever that process then is. So our report will try and canvass all of that process, try and put an estimate of cost onto it, and try and give you an idea of time.
Councillor Mack, have you got a question, or do you want to wait till we get
Just
this
a
and
quick
debate
question.
it?
Quick question, if that's okay. I was just wondering, why was it okay once Fish and Game, relinquished their consent, or why was it not a problem to ECAN to have water running through that channel without a consent until there was a
You can't answer
problem?
the question because it's an ECAN question.
Was something I asked the other day and once again refused to answer.
The Chief Executive doesn't have the answer to the question. It's an ECAN question. You would need to ask them. And there's an opportunity to do that direct to ECAN if they didn't answer the questions through via letter, email or personal contact, either with the Chief Executive or the Chair of the Environment Canterbury. Mr Ratt cannot answer those questions. The recommendation there, should Council decide to pursue an application, Councillor Brown?
No.
We got a second. An application for consent to divert Balmacan stream into Lake Camp, we call for an officer's report to understand the costs and implications. Councillor McMillan, you want to move?
Mr. Mayor, I just wonder whether we could just alter the wording a little of the recommendation, because the recommendation says, should we decide to proceed, we should do all those things, but there is actually no direction as to whether we've decided to proceed.
No, or should we decide? Yeah.
I think it's based on, that council asked for a report on the costs and time involved in applying for a consent, and that's really clear. But at the moment, I think the language is just
suggested wording.
You got it? That council call for an officer's report to understand the costs and implications on an application for consent to divert Balmacan stream into Lake Camp.
Yeah.
Just changed it around a little bit. Does that sound okay?
Got it? You've got that, Philippa?
Yeah.
Moved, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you.
Seconded, Councillor Brown. Open for debate now. Councillor Cameron.
I think it's there's benefits and there's disadvantages. The benefit is it's an open, transparent process, and the residents that live at Lake Camp and enjoy the recreation area and the non-residents that also enjoy it can see then the position and understand the position, and it's a formal document that we can look at and assess the costs. The downside of the other side of the coin I see as an exercise in futility, like listening to Hamish speak today. The cost and that blimmin' lizard business out at the beach was a nightmare that went on, I think, for my whole first term of council. So 3 years, and then we didn't get the consent. We thought we did, and we felt they had a dodgy report, and then blah, 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 but we still didn't get the consent. And the cost of looking at the delay it can take to give consents and all those, you think, well, is it just an exercise in futility? But on the balance, I think perhaps I've revisited my decision, and now I think it is worth doing that investigation, especially considering Hamish advises there's no additional cost, just to make sure that we haven't missed something or there's nothing obvious that can get the water to go into the lake. So I would support the motion.
Councillor Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also in support of the motion. I believe we've got no choice really to proceed with this. We need to be proactive to see if we can get some sort of resolution that protects the lake and makes it a place. Lake Camp in the area is a great place to visit for those who live up there and for the tourists who wish to go there.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'm in support of the motion simply because we need to understand the ramifications, the risks, what needs to be done. If we understand that, then we can make an informed decision as to where the council goes. Because I think it was talked about it being a political decision whether to go somewhere. So that's where it should sit with us to make that decision at the end of it.
Councillor Hubert.
Yeah, I speak in favour. I think we should show our support to the hut holders On our website it says the area is renowned for its beauty and its great cultural significance. Key bit here, I reckon, is when it says we all have a role in making sure it is protected and where possible improved. And as administrators of the area, I think we're called, then I think we should lead that.
Councillor Lovett?
I'd agree with everyone. I support it, and I just think it's a shame that all parties involved cannot get together. You know, we should be getting together for the benefit of this district. It's been managed up there for over 50 odd years, diverting a little bit of this water, and there is fish spawning in that, and once it dries up they will all die. And I just think the whole thing we're becoming over-regulated and ruled, and for one section like DOC to be able to just come along and say no, and it just, we can't do anything. It benefits biodiversity and humans up there.
Councillor Merkel, with any speeches against?
Thank you. Strong support in favour of it, of the motion, but I do have grave concerns that this process going forward is going to be too little, too late, just because of a huge lack of common sense.
No further speakers against?
Sorry, I was just going to...
Councillor,
I think we just need to make it clear with this report, we're not making any decisions here today. All we're doing is getting a report, and there seems to be a lot of feeling around the table that we're moving forward from that report already and doing something about the lake. This is not that. This is just getting a report so that we then make that decision from.
this report will inform us on making that decision. Yeah. Right of reply, Councillor.
Am I allowed to write a reply since there's been more than 3 speakers in support?
Hadn't had any against, so have the right of reply, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. No, I thank everyone. We've heard from the public, we've heard from a lot of different people, and I think this is moving in the right direction.
Put the motion. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. We've got Heb to join us shortly, so there's just a little bit left in the Mayor's report. 11.4 Remuneration Authority. They are inviting feedback on your workload, and there's a you'll have the email which with the survey in which you should fill out. Needs to be done by the 30th of August. There's a recommendation here that Council adopts the amended vehicle kilometre allowance as set out in clause 11 of the Local Government Members 24-25 Amendment Determination 2024. Move on a second for that. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Todd, all in favour, please say aye. No debate. Over the page, any other questions of the Mayor's report before I, Councillor?
Yep, it's the RDR one where you've met with Arawhena Runanga. I'm pleased to see that because we're going to be working with them as partners in the stockwater program we're putting forward. So I'm pleased to see that as RDR is the supplier of a large amount and holds the consent for our stockwater, pleased to see you working that thing, but we'll also be working with them more in the future around the stockwater stuff.
Yeah, very good meeting with Arawhena at the fish screen to show them what's been spent there to keep the fish out of the river, the Rangatata, out of the RDR, I mean. Yeah, good relationship there, so yeah, which is important with everyone to have good relationships, so working well. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you. I note in the past, Mr Mayor, there's been reports and you've been meeting with Health New Zealand regularly. I haven't seen one for a wee while. Where are we up to with that, please?
Councillor Cameron, you were at the last meeting with Health New Zealand.
Have you heard anything? And that was months ago, 2 months ago.
It wasn't that long. Oh, it probably is. We've been away for a month. Yeah, I'm not sure where the next meeting is set for, but there's a lot happening in the health space as we speak since the last time the board has been replaced.
Okay, and can I have
New Zealand.
One more question with regards to how did you get on in the South Island Half Marathon at Lakewood?
I set them off with the
oh, you didn't go after
with
them.
the horn, and I was there when some of the first ones got back.
Well,
a recommendation there that we received the Mayor's report. I'll move.
I'll second.
Second, Councillor Lovett. All in favour, please say aye. Carried. Thank you. We have Heb now, so it's 3 o'clock, but we'll take Heb first. They got a little small presentation, and then we'll have afternoon tea. Is their presentation ready to go on that computer? Yeah. Welcome, gentlemen. We've got Harry, James and Lee. Excellent. You've got a presentation there which is up on the board, which is great. Sorry we're running late, but you've been here for a little while, I understand. So that, we had some important stuff to get through, which you've probably heard, which is, as everyone else has heard too, so that's okay. If you'd like to go through your presentation, and then we can take questions at the end if you'd like. Thank you. Just might want to just introduce yourselves. We know who you are, but your roles with HEB too. You got one each, yeah.
All right.
No, push your button on the right. Yep. The other one. Someone help?
Yes, Mark.
Oh, they're both on.
Okay, I think we're away. Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to present again. My name's Harry Alderson. I'm General Manager of Roading in HEB, and joining me is Lee Hortler. He looks after our South Island maintenance portfolio, and James, who looks after things closer to Ashburton. So our opportunity is to kind of update on things roading, but to start with, I may introduce very briefly the business that we work for. Is HEB Construction. HEB is owned by a business called Vinci, listed on the Paris Stock Exchange. We're part of the Vinci Construction Group, and HEB represents around 2% of Vinci Construction's activity. So while we do around, this year we'll do probably $850 million of turnover in New Zealand, that's around 2% of Vinci worldwide efforts. We're part of a group that employs 250,000 people across about 100 companies. So that's kind of where we fit in. HEB Roading, that's the bit that I look after. Road maintenance, servicing, a bit of traffic management. That's about 30% of our New Zealand capability, if you like, in HEB. And the other things we do, mostly civil work, three waters, etc. Very strong in structures and kind of sizable projects. So if you ever found yourselves as a council with a big river with just one bridge over it, and you thought that was a little bit sketchy and maybe you'd really like to have another one, that's the sort of thing that HEB are really good at building, just so. Right, but more about roading. So I've just got a very brief introduction at a sort of macro level. Things across the country. You'll be well aware that there's been some change in government and government approach. What we are seeing and what I'm seeing across our business, we are either delivering or part of delivering 9 different maintenance contracts across NZ. Generally, what we're seeing is a change of focus. What we would have seen in the previous government was a focus on kind of customer journey having priority. We're seeing as an increased focus on efficiency and productivity of doing work, more value in the work done, and potentially more acceptance of disruption to achieve that. So it's a shift, and we're seeing contract models change to accommodate that. At the same time, we're also dealing with a pretty big change in how traffic management is put into play across New Zealand. There's a new guide to temporary traffic management that is very much a risk-based rather than prescriptive approach, and that while it's emerged from the New Zealand Transport Agency, of course that's landing in slightly different ways in every local authority across the land. So it's quite a difficult path to navigate. And the last point I make on kind of the macro situation around maintenance is we're seeing and a part of and of experiencing and harnessing a bit of our capability in Vinci internationally in the use of AI technology. We've just installed a little bit of gadgetry in our Christchurch contract, sort of fitted a kind of what would it call, mobility scooter Lee with some AI technology to roam around the place and figure out what state footpaths are in, for example. So I guess technology, change of government focus and adapting to a change in traffic management space are the things that we're, kind of dealing with on a national footprint. So let's get closer to home with Lee and James.
Yeah, I'll move on to the local scene. So we currently deliver you a roading operational contract. So that's the operational expenditure. So it's a maintenance only contract we have for Ashburton. So that doesn't include your reseals and rehabilitations. We continue to work really closely with Neil's team to optimise our maintenance spend through a lot of accurate data capture and fault information that we use to inform our decisions. I'm sure the team have shown you some pretty amazing dashboards and decision matrices that they've developed that are best in class across New Zealand. In fact, it was only last week, I think Asheen was presenting that to the wider group at the Low Volume Roads Conference. That's a biannual event, so some really good stuff. We feed that information in to make sense of it with those dashboards. So, and overall, quality has improved on our contract, and our contract team's performing very well. So we get measured around our delivery through key result areas, quite a complex measure that takes a lot of things into account, like responsiveness and completing work and across the board really, and we're consistently getting very good. So it's a really we're in a really good space with the entire team, doing great mahi in that space. So we have completed our 22 action plan, as Harry touched on. We've presented to you a couple of times now, and through 2022 identified. If you remember, there were a few potholes about. We have put a real focus in around quality assurance. Grown and built the expertise within our teams, brought new materials into play when it came to filling holes, and also getting lids on patches a lot quicker. So we now have a sealing resource based in Ashburton to enable us to be a lot more responsive with first coat sealing of patches, which is a really good plus. So we're in good shape moving into this coming season when a lot of the work, the heavy maintenance and work ready for reseals is done. And just a shout out there, when we kicked Ashburton off together, we worked closely at building an innovative patching truck. In fact, two, we call them and have dubbed them the Swiss Army knife trucks. You've probably seen them around your network that are wordled up and have all sorts of gadgets attached to them. We actually got recognition last year nationally in the Health and Safety Award, and just recently Harry travelled to the Northern Hemisphere and we took out the Vinci Oceania Health and Safety Awards, which celebrates health and safety, and in this case, engineering out some of those high-risk activities, like that of fixing signs. We don't use ladders. We have a very safe way of pulling up next to a sign and fixing it. So we couldn't have done that without working with everyone here and involving everybody to come up with these innovative solutions. So we're pretty proud of that. It's a great accolade for us all to achieve. And part of the, and my apologies, there's a sound that I should have taken out between every transition. That's my fault. And so part of the action plan, we recognised and knew that we needed to recheck and revisit our charter. So Neil and Harry led a session last year where we got together and took the charter we kicked off the contract with and refreshed it. And so what you see here is the charter that we came up with, and it ultimately we decided, having gone through the process, that we needed to make it a lot more simpler. It may not look very simple looking at that picture, but to the left are the original wordles that we engaged with everybody involved with kicking the contract off. In the middle are our commitments that we really honed in on and removed a lot of words and kept it simple. But the nugget that we really learnt through this process was to get a team working well together, you really need to make sure your values are aligned. So we introduced this, we came up with that through the refresh, and you'll see on the right our values and council's values aligned, because that's the sort of behaviour and approach that we all bring to work every day. So this is because it was a really good improvement And this is the piece that every new person that comes on contract or gets involved is inducted on, so that they know and understand the expectation around working together as one team, one high-performing team. So we'll move you along to James, who'll give you up.
There we go. Good afternoon, everyone. When we last presented in front of you guys, it was regarding potholes and a lot of them. So we thought it would be fitting to have the graph up there and just to talk through that a little bit. Potholes is trending down. However, we didn't have as much rain this year, but there's also a lot of work that's gone into the network. A lot of additional funding provided by council so that the engineers can target the right repairs at the right areas. So there's a lot of rehabs that's happened across the network, a lot of reseals, and with that sort of work happening, we can target dig-outs and other sort of repairs in the right areas. So we've been able to target the one-off dig-outs that our cyclic truck drivers complain about. That's dangerous, that we just couldn't get to because there was bigger dig-outs somewhere else to target. So that's been really positive, and I think it's just worth mentioning that we need to continue that focus on drainage and on waterproofing and hitting the right areas with the right treatment. So on the graph, you can see it's still trending up. It's still a lot of potholes. It's still an aging network, but the feedback from my teams as well, it's the potholes that they are addressing at the moment is smaller and more manageable. So after a rain event, it doesn't take too long to get around and just have the network back into shape that it's safe for the road users to use. Awesome. Next slide is about unsealed roads, although it doesn't say that. The graph on the right is actually our road rating. So once a year, our supervisors go out and rate all of our unsealed roads, as in all of them. They've got different sections, so they get rated on corrugations, crossfall, drainage, ride comfort, potholes, and metal, which is also pavement. So from that information, we've done that for the last 3 years, and we've built up quite a good database that we can go from. We use that information to see if the roads are stable or if they're trending downwards, and then we can program the appropriate treatment for that. So our preference is to do road rehabs, is to build up a base course, and that's from the data collected. Maintenance meddling we're also doing this year all year round. So as we work in an area, we'll get our trucks to do the maintenance meddling while we're in that area and get a good coverage over the whole network. And as I said, we've got good data now, so to do the right treatments in the right areas. Yep. So from the graphs you can see there's a lot of bony and flat roads. Bony means big rocks sticking out, which is basically very difficult to grade. So when the maintenance graders go over, they either pull out big rocks and it creates that danger, and we tidy up afterwards, or they just can't grade it. It's too far gone. And flat roads is obviously not ideal because you just trap the water inside in the middle of the road, and that creates more potholes. So by doing the metal build-ups, you actually get the shape back into the road. Water goes to the side. With minimal drainage, you can get it off the road, and your road's good for another few seasons. If you just do straightforward maintenance meddling, you're just basically putting a covering layer on top, which helps, but not for too long. So it's finding the right balance between maintenance meddling the semi-good roads and then finding the roads that actually need the rehabs, and our teams have been actively doing them. Cool. And then last slide, just what we're looking forward to this year. At the moment, we've got a target of a certain amount of metal that needs to hit the roads. So to to achieve that goal, we need to find more resources. We're good for the next year or two, but looking at the future, we will have to identify or find sources in the right areas. So with council staff, we've sort of got a 3-year plan going, and we are applying for consent and doing investigations in other pits so that we can satisfy that need. Also, with a change in traffic management, we've got a change in strategy. We'll be we'll be doing more road closures, which will allow us to be more productive and reduce the time that there's a lot of cones out on the roads. We'll also, while we've got a road closure up, get all the work done. If it's a pre-reseal repair, we'll get all the edge breaks done, all the leveling, look at the signs while we're there, while the road's closed and it's safe for our people to do so. We'll try and target as much work as we can and then be less disruptive. And then the last point that I've got there is our team goal for the year is to have all the pre-seal repairs completed before December. It will be a first in Ashburton, I think, ever. So yes, we've got the goal that's not just the dig outs on the reseal areas, it's the edge breaks, the pre-leveling and a bit of sweeping around the network. That's it from me. Thank you.
Into questions.
That's it. I also failed to, mention before, the apology from David Simpson, your Executive General Manager, who wanted to be here today but couldn't, so sorry I didn't do that early on. Question, Councillor Ellis.
Great, thank you for the presentation, that was fantastic. Great goal to have there at the end. When you're out like fixing up a pothole, if it's a continuously problem one and you think, look, this is a bit silly now, this really needs a dig out and something more major, you obviously feed that information back through to Neil's team and deal with it that way?
Yes, we do, but there is quite a few of them out there. So we try and target, we've got limited funding throughout the year, so we try and target the areas that really need it. But we call it the one-off dig-outs, so if there's if there's a dangerous area, we'll get our teams to go and do the one-off dig-outs and try and make it safe.
So, as an add-on to that question, if the problem is because there's not good drainage on that road, so a soak pit beside it would be a good solution, you obviously feed that information back, or do you just have the right to go and dig that soak pit and fill it with boulders and sort of fix the problem, which will then help alleviate the other issue?
Yeah, no, we would program it and get approval to do the work because that needs sign off from the council engineers. But it all gets entered into a system called RAM, which feeds into those dashboards that you see.
Cool. Just following on from that, notice that you do dig outs, you get them nice and smooth, and it takes a while to get the seal on, but you're now doing sealing within the district. And between waiting to you finish preparing it till the seal goes on, it goes back rough and then it gets sealed and it's rough, so that should be an improvement, having your sealing local.
Yes, and we've also changed our methodology. We've used M440 in the past, which is it doesn't have as much fines, so it doesn't bind up as much. We've changed our aggregate, our formula a little bit, so so we get a much better bind, and we also use a product called Compact X to which basically just gives it a little bit of a sealing layer, so so the surface lasts a lot longer. We've had some really good results to the end of, say, from December onwards last year, which allows us just that little bit longer for seal. But our plan is to get the one-off dig-outs, to get the smaller quantities. We'll seal with our own resources.
As soon as after you've prepared them.
Yep. So the dig-outs will still be done, still be backfilled and left open for traffic to hit it for a week or two, just so that the settlement gets done. Otherwise, it tends to leave a hollow area if you seal it too quickly. So the traffic still needs to do its thing, and then we'll prep the surface and then get the sealers in a lot quicker.
Councillor Cameron.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm reading bullet point 2, change of strategy with regards to temporary traffic management, because you probably know that it's been a source of frustration to us, these road cones and holding up the traffic and things. why have you decided that? I understand more efficiency, so you can do the job when all the roads closed and move across and to and fro. Is that going to mean it's quicker, like when the road's closed? Because that has the potential to be significantly disruptive to shut the roads.
Yeah, that's the trade-off. The trade-off is perhaps slightly more disruption, but for less time.
And who's
where that's
sorry,
where that's emerging from the change from Copton, which is a code of practice, which has just got a whole bunch of cartoons you pick from and go, that's the one closest to the thing I need to do, to a risk-based approach for traffic means that every piece of work we do, we have to assess the risk. That's the risk to our people doing the work and to the people experiencing the work, and then decide on which strategy alleviates the risk most. You know, the best way to,
yeah, we've had that explained to us on numerous occasions.
Yeah,
thank you very much.
So we still we understand, and there's some kind of slightly unhelpful media on this, particularly from a place I live closer to, with a mayor in the North Island. But
the other one, the other Mayor Brown.
Yeah. So slightly unhelpful kind of anti-cone media coverage. We still see our first role to promote the safety of the people doing the work, the people experiencing the work, and then we apply the increased level of sort of options that are available through having a different guide.
And we certainly support that. We certainly don't want people getting harmed on the roads. But the trade-off of that is significant inconvenience for our ratepayers and our community. So it would be nice, and I fully support whatever strategy you need to do to ensure safety, that these things are reviewed continuously on the day, and the jolly road cones are closed off the road, which would be very disruptive because we're a big network here and people have got to go a long way to go get round the corner sometimes. That they're removed at the evening when work finishes so that people can go back and do their normal travel, because that also, from the safety of the user on the road, is a risk, because people take risks and they get frustrated and do things they normally wouldn't do. Just as an aside, can I ask, just out of nosiness, what is the percentage of a job, say it costs $1,000, what is the percentage for traffic management and safety and things? On average, I understand some will have different levels.
Yes, significantly different, but it would be around the 10 to 15% of total cost.
Yeah.
It does depend on the work and the size of it and but it's significant, and it can be in that order of 10 to 15%.
So 10 to 15% of our contracted payments that we make to HEP is spent on traffic management, essentially.
Yeah, would be in that order.
Thank you.
So if we can, for example, do twice as much work in the same day with the same resource, of course we'll halve the net cost of traffic management. So it's kind of the trade-off.
Just to follow on from that question, I get comments, I think we all do, is when a roadworks is happening in a rural road, Tarsfield Road, 30 k's while you're travelling through it, which is fine while the workers are there. But then when they leave for the night or the weekend and they don't take the 30k sign down and put a 50 or 60 or whatever is more relevant when there's no workers there, that is a big area of frustration.
Yep, so our go-to is, or our instruction to our workers is it needs to be changed to a 50. So if it's seen, please shout out and we'll address it. But that's also based on risk. If it is a high volume intersection and there's loose gravels on, we'll keep it at 30. And that'll be for a reason, and we will communicate that to the engineers. We've had incidents where cars skidded off the road, so if it is left at 30, there will most likely be a reason. But we've tried since last year to get the speeds back up to 50 at night, and our teams were fairly good. They slipped up a few times, which happens, but.
Yeah, intersections is fine. It's a small. It's when it's 2 to 3 kilometres of road and it's left at 30 kilometres. It's very frustrating, and the penalties for not adhering to it are severe. Yeah, so work on that would be great. Councillor Mackle.
Thank you. Just a couple of nosy questions. Just wondering what your policy is with gravel roads, as your lack of gravel on the roads and dealing with that. But if you're crowning them and you've put the blade across, what is your policy for cutouts to get rid of the water, excess water, flood water, etc.
So on sections where we do rehab, we try and do positive drainage. So we've got a team coming from behind, and they do cutouts to allow the water to drain onto the berm. It doesn't necessarily happens everywhere. It's where the water runs off. So so our team identifies those areas, and we do the cutouts afterwards.
Yeah,
If the water doesn't flow away, we install soak holes to soak up as much as possible. But water doesn't disappear immediately. It takes a day or so to dissipate. So
there's been a little bit of discussion in this building that there has been a noticeable lack of cutouts on our gravel roads. My other question is just on driver training on your graders. I was talking to a very experienced and well-weathered grader driver who had thought about starting a business on training grader drivers, but he was kneecapped because OSH stood in the way because you couldn't have two people in the cab. How do you train your drivers? Or operators, sorry.
Yeah. I'm not a trainer myself, so I know it is a good question. Yeah, OSH doesn't allow it. You need to be strapped in. You need to have your safety belt on, operating any gear. So we normally start off by just getting them to drive the grader in a pit somewhere and play around with the controls under supervision. Make small movements at very low speeds, and they get a feel for the machine. Lucky we're in a position in Ashburton where we've got a trained grader driver that's doing all our works, and throughout his operations he's already trained his offsider to be able to.
Yeah, this seems a very like a very good operator now is like the hen's teeth basically, and yeah, what can be done really? I don't know. You probably haven't got the answer, but we need some way of training these guys. Yeah, is it possibly building a bigger cab to accommodate two people on a grader in an area so these guys can be trained to have two seats that they can be strapped in?
Yeah. We also use RTs while our drivers are going about, and we've debated this a while back. Forming a new rehab team, for instance, you need a lot of experience on the grader. So we've got a foreman in another district that is absolutely brilliant, and he's trained a few grader drivers for us through the years. The foreman that we've got in Ashburton at the moment was trained by him as well. But that's investing in that driver for a couple of years and getting him through the ropes. So it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to get these guys. A lot of RT work.
Yeah. I feel like I should have the answer to this question. My son's a grader driver, so when he was learning his craft, my instruction to him was get in the roller and follow the grader and watch it for the next 2 years. So when you get in the cab, you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. So having some experience of what's required before you're on the levers is one point, and secondly, when we were being recognised for our cyclic truck development, as Lee mentioned in a recent conference, we also had the opportunity to look at some simulator products that are now being developed, and we're using in some other Vinci businesses to cover a range of machine operating truck, grader, excavator environments. So I think we'll see an opportunity with the quality of that technology to put our people into safe experience gaining environments without being at risk on the road. I think that's what happens next.
Councillor Hooper.
Thank you. Good to hear about the truck, your award, the new mix, but I'm still coming across ratepayer frustration around pothole blowouts. Can you tell us why they are still happening?
I think that there's still a lot of cracks out on the network. there's still a lot of roads that needs pavement. There's a lot of deflection on the network, and it doesn't take much moisture to get into those cracks and open them up. So yes, it'll still be a lot of years and a lot of investment before we get Ashburton network up to a standard. Even then, there will still be potholes.
Particularly too when we fill them in the winter when there's water, right? Because you get serious pore pressures built when the vehicles go over it. Water's got nowhere to go, and it takes the less path of resistance, and it's generally right next to the pothole. Yeah.
So in some circumstances, are you seeing a pothole and you're saying, oh, we'll give it a crack anyway? It's probably going to blow
From
out.
a safety perspective, definitely.
Yeah.
We have to. We don't pass by a pothole. Our teams, we fill it as best we can, take away what's wet, and seal it with emulsion, and then put the mix in. Some of them is bound to blow out, but we need to make the road safe.
But you also know the hot spots, and you keep going back to them more frequently, and then programming the permanent repairs that can be done in the right time of year.
Councillor Wilson?
It's to do with we have a subcommittee, this community, the roading reference group. Mr. Could you please allude what we are? It's a subcommittee of the council, or is it a?
Less of a subcommittee and more of a working group.
Working group, yes,
Yeah.
that's fine.
We call
yeah.
it a reference group
And I just,
or a road forum.
You may not be aware of it, but I just would like to make sure that you liaise with our roading manager because there was a lot of good input about a lot of things we've talked about here with a lot of input, road users that know the network, and there was good feedback that came out of that meeting, which would be important to make sure it gets back to the people who are doing the job.
Yeah, I was at the first one this year, not at the second one. So. Thank you for that.
Looks like we've got all the questions covered. Thank you, gentlemen. That's a good update on how the roading is going, and our latest survey, which was carried out over last year, saw the arrow pointing up, which is a good achievement, so well done for that. Still got more to go, but at least it's pointing in the right direction at long last, so well done. We're going to break now for a cup of tea. You're more than welcome to join us and have a chat. I'll adjourn the meeting for afternoon tea.
Bye.